In this episode, we talk about the 2024 UN Climate Change Conference COP29 that is being held in Baku, Azerbaijan. We also talk about Delhi's AQI improving slightly. But first, we talk about an allegation of distribution of cash for votes. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. On 19th November, BJP National General Secretary Vinod Tawde faced the allegation of distributing money for votes. In a video that surfaced recently, he was seen being heckled by the supporters of Bahujan Vikas Aghadi for allegedly violating the code of conduct. To learn what happened on Tuesday, why Tawde was accused of distributing cash for votes, and how it will impact the BJP as far as the Maharashtra elections are concerned, we have the Indian Express's Shubhangi Khapre joining us. Shubhangi, in your story, you write that Tawde is seen as the most powerful Maharashtra leader in Delhi. Can you tell us why that is the case?
Yes, see, Vinod Tawde has risen from the grassroots as far as the Maharashtra BJP politician is concerned. So he started his career with the youth wing of the party, that is Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad. That's a youth wing, students wing of the party. And gradually he rose up the ladder. And the best part of his political career is he was groomed by the two most powerful leaders of Maharashtra. One is late Gopinath Munde, who's always seen as the biggest mass leader as far as Maharashtra politics is concerned. And Gopinath Munde was also one of those leaders, with the OBC kind of, as far as the constituents are concerned, he catered to the OBC community basically. So he was one of the tallest leaders as far as the BJP is concerned in Maharashtra. And at the same time, around the same time, there was this great strategist and a very veteran leader like Pramod Mahajan, who was seen as somebody, who directly had a approach and was a key strategist in Atal Bihari Vajpayee-led coalition government in Delhi. So his grooming was under these two big leaders of Maharashtra. So he had learned the politics through this, field work. So in that sense, yes, Tawde was always perceived as one of the important leaders in Maharashtra, even before he was shifted to Delhi in that sense. He was moved to Delhi in 2021. It was also perceived that he was being rehabilitated politically, but gradually he was first moved there as a All India BJP secretary, and within a year he was elevated as General Secretary All India BJP in the team of JP Nanda, who was National Party President at that time. And he was gradually kind of promoted. He is at present playing a very important role. So in that sense, yes, Vinod Tawde as a General Secretary at All India level is a very important leader from Maharashtra representing the centre.
Right. And what happened in 2019 as far as Tawde and the BJP are concerned? And what was his reaction towards the incident?
In 2019, he was denied a ticket to contest in the assembly elections. And that was seen as a kind of a rude shock to many and as well as him, because the decision was conveyed to him at an 11th hour. And it was not taken very well by sizable of followers within the party as well as he himself. Because in terms of Maharashtra politics, he was amongst the top-rung politician in the state as far as the decision-making and the strategies were concerned. Also, it displays his maturity in the sense that when he was denied a ticket in Maharashtra in 2019, he was absolutely shaken and he was terribly upset. But he did not voice his disappointment in public. Whatever he had to say, whatever he had to explain was done at the appropriate platform with the leaders in Delhi as well as state leaders, but he never took his grievances in public. And I think at some point, his patience was rewarded by the party.
And were the reasons behind him not getting a ticket by the BJP specified?
See, in BJP, there are several factors and which officially nobody has kind of communicated. The decision was taken at an 11th hour, that's for sure, because one day before he was denied the ticket, I have met him. And like me, many reporters at that time. And he seemed very confident. I mean, there was no question of, he not contesting. And not only that, he was sure of the ticket. He also had conveyed the strategies he had planned for his constituency. And he had also detailed like what was in favor and what all he had done in the last 1 year, and how it's going to be fructify and how it's going to help the BJP in the elections. So in that sense, yes, he was very, very confident. And when he was denied the ticket, that did come as a shocker to him and to the party workers in Maharashtra overall. But then there were two theories being said at that time, that the decision was taken by the central leadership and the state leaders did not have any role at that time. That was one of the explanation given. But exactly what went wrong, why he was denied, and at that time when he was denied the ticket, it was seen as a punishment, but nothing came out of it. But yes, when Vinod Tawde, when he was asked, he said, yes, I spoke to the central leadership and they explained me the reason why they denied it. And he said, yes, in party, you have to sometimes accept the decision and nothing wrong in that. But exactly what went wrong, what were the reasons why the center denied him the ticket, that still is under wraps and it's not come out till now.
Shubhangi, in the beginning, you talked about Vinod Tawde and the role that he has played in Maharashtra and within the BJP. So, what would you say is the kind of role that he is playing in the Maharashtra Assembly elections 2024?
In Maharashtra Assembly elections, the entire elections were led by Deputy Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis. And along with the state BJP, the central leadership was very active. Amit Shah, Union Home Minister, he himself had series of meetings there region-wise before the elections were announced. So the Fadnavis and Amit Shah, they were very coordinating, and the state and center coordination was perfect, and there was this coordination amongst the alliance. So in that sense, Vinod Tawde's role in Maharashtra Assembly elections was very minimal, and he was not in the center of the state assembly politics. Now, of course, he used to frequently come here, and he had attended all the meetings, of course, in the sense that, as I said, he was a strategist. So whatever support the party needed or whatever he must have been assigned by the center, he was probably carrying out silently.
Right. And Shubhangi, now if we come to the 19th of November, can you tell us what happened? What was the course of incidents that led to Vinod Tawde being accused of distributing cash for votes?
Now, what happened exactly on Tuesday is he came as part of the campaign, and he was traveling in that belt. And what he says is that during his travel from Abada, which is a tribal belt in Palghar district, from there to Vasai Virar, he was traveling, and there was this Rajan Naik, a candidate of BJP. So he just wanted to have a word with him. So this was in a way like he just wanted to catch up with some of this party workers and the candidate a day before the polling to kind of explain them or brief them and take a feedback, most probably, on the technicalities of these elections and what they should be mindful of. This is his explanation. But the whole thing is when he went there and he called up that person, and party workers, they all assembled in one of the hotels in Vasai Virar. And while they were in midst of this discussion, suddenly the Bahujan Vikas Aghadi, which has a stronghold there in that belt, Vasai Virar, the workers barged in and they encircled Mr. Tawde, and they apparently questioned him on why the money is being dispersed there, and basically raising the questions of, a violation of code of conduct. Now, the videos which were circulated, now who took the videos and how it was circulated to the media, and it was across the televisions and news channels. So now the two versions of it, the Bahujan Vikas Aghadi, which is led by Hitendra Thakur, now he said that we knew that money was being distributed from that place, from that venue for some time. And the workers went inside, they had access to some of the funds that were lying there in that hotel. And so they kind of questioned the leader, basically, and the workers. And it was not something like, there was no question of violence or anything in that sense.
And what was Vinod Tawde's reaction to this allegation?
Vinod Tawde obviously kind of denied this whole thing, saying that it was not so. He had just dropped in there for a cup of tea with his party workers a day before the polls. And he also demanded the probe, and he also kind of said that the election commission should investigate the whole thing and bring out the truth, basically.
Right. Also, Shubhangi, in your story, you mentioned that Shiv Sena UBT's Sanjay Raut said that this episode seemed like an internal matter of the BJP as they want to clip the wings of Tawde. So, have there been instances of issues or problems between Tawde and the BJP?
No, he is a very senior leader who is working in the team of JP Nanda at the center, who's having meetings regularly with Amit Shah and the Prime Minister. So, in that sense, no, there are no issues as far as the organization is concerned. Because had there been any issues, he would not have continued in the post of General Secretary, which is very, very significant post as far as BJP's national team is concerned. Now, secondly, there were always this perception that probably he was in competition with Devendra Fadnavis when it comes to the chief minister's post. But then there's a very clear division of work. Tawde is in center and Devendra Fadnavis is a very important leader who has been vested with the entire responsibilities of Maharashtra by Amit Shah and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So there are very clear division of work given by the central leadership to both these leaders. But yes, in subtle way, you can say that if Mayutu is voted to power, and if there is a race for CM-ship on whether, BJP continues Devendra Fadnavis or they were exploring some other name, that's a bit of speculation, too far-fetched also. So I don't think this differences theory is actually factual in that sense. But yes, opposition is going to play on it because the counting was there today. So they created a hype.
Right. And how do we see this incident impacting the BJP's image in Maharashtra with the assembly elections happening right now?
See, the images of a very senior top BJP leader being, nabbed, being questioned by the opposition leaders. He's encircled, and then a group of people who wave out, are seen holding the 500 rupees note and making all kind of allegations. So this was, in that sense, a bit of was an embarrassment for the BJP. So in that sense, yes, the party was embarrassed. It was worried, but at the same time, as I said, it's not proven as yet whether Vinod Tawde was distributing, because there's nothing to substantiate that yes, he was carrying the bags of loads of money and or he was seen distributing the money to any of his workers or party men. So all these kind of allegations that yes, he was in a hotel, he did not deny. Yes, he said, yes, I was in the hotel. I was there with my party workers to share a cup of tea and to discuss about the technicalities of the elections. The party has dismissed as a political stunt, and the opposition has made an allegation that the BJP indulged in the unethical or violated the code of conduct and indulged in unethical practices a day before the elections. But then, yes, these all aspects, these are all issues which are before the election commission. And when the investigation is done, a lot of things will become clear.
Right. And do we see this incident impacting the elections particularly?
I don't think so, because yes, its impact would be to an extent that, it is inconvenience the party. The party's image takes a beating, because when you go viral on the videos, when you flash the videos, or the people outside will also start questioning. So to that extent, yes. But whether that this incident is going to impact overall elections in Maharashtra or impact the elections in that entire Vasai-Virar belt, I don't think, because the elections are far more complex exercises, and there are many more factors. There are multiple factors that, determine which way who's voting and which way the parties are going to gain or lose, and how the coalition combination works. So yes, but this kind of instances leave the party a little shaken, and to the extent that, it does not augur well for its image in that sense.
Next, we talk about COP29. As the stalemate over climate finance negotiations continue at the 2024 UN Climate Change Conference COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, delegates from about 200 countries gather for the primary goal of COP29 to develop a shared plan for curbing global warming and to draw focus on scaling up climate finance to help developing nations tackle the adverse effect of climate change. With time running down as the conference is scheduled to end today, vulnerable nations are seeking $3.1 trillion for climate finance, including building out their own clean energy systems. In this segment, my colleague Ichha Sharma speaks to the Indian Express's Amitabh Sinha, who dissects the discussion and the negotiating process considered to step up ambition of climate action in developing countries.
So, Amitabh, how would you describe the current state of international climate discussions, particularly in the light of the COP29 conference?
So the main agreement that is expected to come out of COP29 is the one on climate finance. And the thing about finance here is what countries are trying to do is to scale up the amount of finance flows that goes into climate actions. And, they are just trying to agree to a big number which would enable greater climate actions throughout the globe. So, as of now, the only figure that is available is $100 billion figure. So, in the climate negotiations, the developed countries have an obligation to provide money to the developing countries. That's a legal obligation. What is happening at COP29 is that the countries are discussing how to increase this figure, this quantum of money beyond $100 billion. So $100 billion was supposed to be mobilized by the developed countries between the period 2020 and 2025. And now the negotiations are on for a higher mobilization for a period post 2025. There are significant differences between developed and developing countries on what this higher amount should be. And that is what the main issue of negotiations at COP29 is.
As you mentioned, that climate finance is the top agenda of the conference. Could you elaborate on the new collective quantified goal agreement that the countries are negotiating in this conference?
So, the finance agreement that is expected to come out of COP29 is formally called the New Cumulative Quantitative Goal, or NCQG. It basically means that we are looking at a new finance goal, and there are different numbers that are being discussed, mainly from the developing country sides. And the developing countries have been asking for at least $1 trillion every year from developed countries to developing countries, and mainly in the form of publicly raised finance and grant based or concessional finance. So the developed countries will have to raise this money from public sources and then provide this money to the developing countries either as grants or concessionary loans, right? So not in terms of like loans at market rates, but at concessionary loans or as grants, which are completely free, right? So these are the demands from the developing countries. Now, the developed countries haven't opened their cards yet. They agree on the overall requirement of climate finance being in the range of $1 trillion or maybe even more, but they do not think that this entire money needs to go to the developing countries. They also differ on the quantum of public finance that should comprise this $1 trillion figure. So how much of that $1 trillion should be publicly raised money? Of course, as I said, developing countries want the entire money to be publicly raised, but the developed countries are not very sure about that. They want a lesser amount of money to be publicly raised, and the rest can come in through private sources or other sources, can be in the form of investments. So the developed countries have actually not opened up their cards as yet. The negotiations are still happening. There are 2 more days to go. The COP29 meeting actually ends on Friday evening or Friday night. But as has been the case with every other previous COP, it's likely to go into Saturday as well, and maybe even Sunday, because COPs never end on time because negotiations are never over. So as of now, this is the state of play. But over the next 2 days, this is obviously, if there is an agreement, then things will change and there will be some sort of a compromise agreement that would be reached.
Right. Given the dynamic nature of this conference, what are the key differences which can be found on how developed and developing countries approach climate change?
Now, the international climate architecture, which is governed by the 1994 UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, is such that it divides the world into developed and developing countries. There is a group of countries which have been held mainly responsible for causing climate change, and also been assigned the main responsibility of dealing with climate change, fighting climate change. These are the group of countries whose main responsibility it is to fight climate change, also help the developing countries fight climate change. And that's where the obligation to provide finance and technology to the developing countries comes in. So the world itself has been divided into developed and developing countries by this climate architecture, and therefore their positions or their worldviews are very, very different with respect to climate change. While, of course, both sides agree that climate change is happening and urgent steps need to be taken to stop or halt global warming, the way to fight that, of course, the country positions are very, very different. So those kind of differences are getting manifested in the finance negotiations here as well. There are, of course, as I said, there are lots of other issues that are being discussed. They get discussed every year. Finance also gets discussed every year. But this year, the focus is mainly on finance, while there will be outcomes on other issues as well.
Right, and could you elaborate on the key grievances from both sides and how they reflect broader geopolitical tensions?
So the developing countries complain, and that's a standing complaint, and not without reason, that developed countries have not fulfilled their responsibilities under the climate change architecture. So what did the developed countries have to do? They had to reduce their emissions by certain amounts. They had to provide money to the developing countries, and they had to provide technology as well. And there are a host of other responsibilities that we won't get into, but these were the main things. And the complaint is, and as I said, not without reason, that developed countries have not delivered on any one of their obligations. They have not made adequate emission cuts. They have, of course, not provided adequate amount of money and certainly not technology. So that's a standing complaint that developing countries have against the developed countries, saying because you have not been fulfilling your obligations, your legal obligations under UN Framework Convention or under the Paris Agreement of 2015, it is because of your failure to not adhere to your obligations that the climate crisis has been worsening, and because of which everyone is suffering. They also complain that because the developed countries have not fulfilled their responsibilities, the developing countries have to pitch in, and the responsibility of fighting climate change is getting shifted to the developing nations as well. So that is a regular complaint that usually comes out at every COP, and this one is no different.
So, Amitabh, how do you see the current dynamics affecting developing nations' ability to respond to climate change effectively?
So, as I said, under the climate architecture governed by the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the primary responsibility of fighting climate change is with the developed countries. Those are the countries who have to reduce their emissions, and these are the countries, mainly, broadly the same set of countries, who have to provide finance and technology and help the developing countries adapt or deal with climate change. Now, because the developed countries have not delivered what was expected or mandated to them, the developing countries are getting greatly impacted by the adverse effects of climate change, and also at the same time have to put in their own resources to fight climate change within their own countries. Now, the way the climate change architecture was designed, they were supposed to receive help from the developed world for doing all this. Now, that is not happening, because of which there is an increasing stress on the developing countries, both in the form of climate impacts and also the economic stress of having to mobilize resources on their own to fight climate change. So both those kind of things are happening. And that's why you see this regular complaint from the developing countries about developed countries not doing enough on climate change.
And in the end, we talk about Delhi's AQI. An improvement in weather conditions brought a slight respite to the people in Delhi as the overall air quality was no longer in the severe category yesterday after the capital was gripped by one of the worst streaks in a decade. A week after Delhi saw its first dense smog day, the weather conditions also became clear yesterday morning over much of the plains in North India. After its air quality index remained in the severe or severe plus category for 6 consecutive days, Delhi's average air quality was 376 or in the very poor category at 10 a.m. yesterday as per the Central Pollution Control Board. However, a few air quality monitoring stations in Delhi reported severe air quality levels as well. Out of the 37 such stations, 11 reported severe air quality and the remaining very poor. The most polluted place was Wazirpur with the AQI of 437, followed by Jahangirpuri with the AQI of 436, both landing in the severe category. Krishna Mishra, senior scientist at the Indian Meteorological Department, said that due to the strong northwesterly winds, the maximum and the minimum temperatures have also fallen close to their normal values against the situation that was a week ago, where temperatures were 4 to 6 degrees Celsius above the normal due to prevailing easterlies. While dense fog was reported only over East Uttar Pradesh on Wednesday as per the IMD officials, the condition improved by yesterday morning and no significant fog conditions were reported over the northern plains. Mercury levels dipped further and the minimum temperature was 10.2 degrees Celsius yesterday. Lower temperatures keep the pollutants trapped in the atmospheric layers close to the surface. In the next 7 days, as per the IMD forecast, the minimum temperature and the maximum temperature in Delhi will be 10 to 12 degrees Celsius and 24 to 27 degrees Celsius respectively. These are around normal as they are close to the long period temperature range for the next 7 days. The early warning system developed by IITM said in its forecast that the air quality will be in the very poor category for the next 6 days. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's episode was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Ichha Sharma and me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcast and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.